on a project by Manuela Hürlimann, Michel, Plüss, Marc, Cuny, Alla, Stöckli, Malgorzata, Alla, Ulasik, Manfred, Vogel, and Marc, Cieliebak. And it's about how we crowdsourced a large Swiss-German speech-to-text dataset, the Schweizer Dialektsammlung. The authors of this contribution come from the Zurich University of Applied Sciences, ZAW, and the University of Applied Science and Arts, Northwestern Switzerland, FHNW, as well as Spinning Bytes. And the glue to all of this is probably the Swiss NLP Association that keeps the work together. And if I'm correct, Manuela Hürlimann from ZAW will give the presentation now. Thank you very much and welcome.
Exactly. Thank you. And welcome to the presentation. I think at this point in time, actually, a more accurate title would be how we are crowdsourcing a large Swiss German speech-to-text data set. You will see why that is. We're basically still working on it. Yeah, but first I'd like to talk a bit about the background for this initiative, which we call Schweizer Dialektsammlung. What's our motivation and what do we want to achieve? So speech to text, I think I don't need to specifically explain to you, but what is perhaps a bit peculiar about the setting with Swiss German is that we are aiming to produce standard German text. That's one option. The other option is to create a Swiss German transcript. We decided for the standard German transcript for the same reason that Julian hinted at, that basically once you have a standard German text, you have many more tools available that will just work on it as opposed to having to develop them. So basically for Swiss German, we've talked about it as a low resource language, and for speech to text, this is definitely the case. There is no large-scale public data set available to solve this task. And we have some smaller corpora that I listed here. There's the Walliser Deutsch, which is 7 hours. There's Archimob, which was also mentioned with 70 hours. And the Swiss Parliament's corpus that will be presented by Michel just in the talk after, which is around 300 hours. But this is still far from what we need to develop state-of-the-art SDT. That's typically thousands of hours if you want a really good performance. So what are we doing with the Swiss Dialect Collection? We are collecting dialect recordings, and we're doing this by crowdsourcing. So basically we're looking for volunteers to, as we call it, donate their voice to this data set. So basically we don't pay them. We count on voluntary participation to assemble a data set of around 2,000 hours. That's the goal. And this means if the average person contributes around 5 minutes of their time, and then yeah, they need to record and the recordings need to be validated, as I will show, we need to reach something like 24,000 people in all of German-speaking Switzerland, which is a rather massive number. And I will talk a bit later about how we are planning to do that and how close we are to achieving it.
Manuela, maybe you can lower the microphone a bit so that we don't have the air noise. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Is that better now? Okay. Now for the data collection itself, basically what we do, I will show the web app in a second. It's also accessible at dialektsammlung.ch. This is used for collecting the data, and it's based on Mozilla Common Voice. And what goes into it are different types of texts. So we have on the one hand texts from news articles supplied by Tamedia and 20 Minutes. We have a portion of the Common Voice German data set, and we also have some subtitles to represent more spontaneous spoken language, basically. And then there's a sentence selection process, which basically applies to criteria. Since there is a kind of translation step involved in this process, we try to make the sentences simple enough so that this can be achieved. So they cannot be longer than 12 words. This is a bit different if you have a language where you simply read the text that you see. There you can have a larger sentence complexity. But in our case, yeah, we just experimented a bit with sentence length and found that 12 words kind of works out well for people to still be able to translate it and speak it. And then we also make sure that there's a broad vocabulary present in the collection, but at the same time, we try to avoid too specialized terms. This is one thing we noticed with Common Voice, that since it's mainly based on Wikipedia, there are some very specific terms from botany and so on. So we try to filter for these. And then all of this goes into our data collection web application. And we have 3 basic functionalities there. There's plenty more, but this is like the basics. The first thing is metadata about the users. So we try to track their dialect by having them indicate the postcode that actually represents their dialect best. So not where they live, but which place represents the way they speak, and also other metadata such as age and gender on a voluntary basis. And then the core part really is the speaking. So they are shown a standard German sentence. They think a little bit about it, and then they record it in their dialect, how they would say this in their day-to-day life. And the other step is validation. This is open to anyone who can understand Swiss German. They don't necessarily have to speak it. So they can listen to the sentence and basically indicate A, whether it matches the text that is provided, and B, whether the quality is okay. This is the same model that is applied by Mozilla Common Voice as well. So here you see what this looks like. This is the recording view. So that's the sentence. And by clicking on the microphone, this can be recorded. There's various other features to facilitate that. There's some, for people who record a lot, the keyboard shortcuts come in handy, I would think. So basically you click the A key and start recording, and then you click it again to stop recording. You can report sentences if they are offensive or if they contain any other problems. And basically, if you're faced with a sentence that you would not know how to say in your dialect, then you can simply skip it. And that's the validation view. So you would be playing the recording and then assessing it, as I was just explaining. Now, I said we need to reach 24,000 people, and we are absolutely aware that this is a lot. So maybe you have actually heard about our project already. We were on different media. We were on Schweizaktuell 3 weeks ago with the project. There was a lot of reporting in different regional media and also national media. We have some prominent supporters such as Simon Ensler here, who is a comedian from Appenzell, in case you don't know him. And he made a video that he shared on social media. So we are trying different avenues to make people aware of the project and to get them to record for us. And as an extension of that, and to add a bit of a competitive element, this summer we will launch 2 things. One is under the working title Schokkitaler Battle. So Schokkitaler, for those who don't know, they're these chocolate coins basically that are wrapped in gold paper. That's what we decided to call the currency that users will compete for. So there will be a leaderboard, so users can see how they rank in comparison to other users. That's the one thing. And the other thing is the clash of the cantons. So basically we want to see which canton can record the most. And obviously we will take into account how many Swiss German speakers there are to start with in the canton. So we hope that this will be even more of an incentive for people to participate. And as is hinted at here with the trophy, we will also provide some actual prizes for the winners, both on the individual level and the canton level. So now you probably wonder, well, how have we fared so far with collecting data? The truth is we're still far from our goal of 2,000 hours. We have something like 17,000 recordings, which corresponds to roughly 20 hours. So still a long way to go. And we have just below 1,000 users who actually made the recording. There are more people who come to the site, but this is the number of users that have actually recorded at least once for us. So please, this is my call to all of you. If you speak Swiss German, go to the website and contribute. It's really easy. I hope I've been able to show that. Everyone can participate as long as you speak Swiss German. And if you can take something like 5 minutes to create recordings for us, it would be great. Spread the word, motivate your colleagues and friends. It would be really cool. And then to sum up, here are some lessons learned so far during the project. We've been trying to establish this kind of data collection, or just to kind of try to lay the foundation for a Swiss German speech to text. We've talked to many people and companies, and there was no great interest to support this. But now that we are doing it, there is a rather large interest. So we get lots of requests about the data and when it will be available and how will be the license terms and all of that. Another thing that we learned is if you're building a web application for thousands of users, it takes a lot of effort to build it, test it, and actually get it running the way you would like it to be. Then for this goes more for the PR strategy, it's definitely better to use several different ways to reach people. So we have the media, we had print media and radio mostly, and also TV. And we have social media with our celebrities, basically. And then we have some more ideas up our sleeve, let's say, for the future. And what we learned in communicating with these different audiences, I would say, is that the one thing everybody understands, if you want to explain this project in one sentence, is we want to teach series Swiss German. It's not exactly what we want to do. We basically want to create a foundational data set and model for Swiss German. But this is really the pitch that everyone will get. And finally, a lot of people care about dialects. So this was the media reaction, but also messages we got from the population. They were very enthusiastic about this project and saying, oh, but did you know that in Appenzell, there's actually these 7 different dialect areas and these are the differences. And this is really, it touches a chord with almost everyone, I would say, but it doesn't automatically translate into a large number of recordings, as you've seen. So this is something we are currently also asking ourselves. Like, is it the incentives? Is it that, yeah, people aren't motivated enough to contribute? So that's one thing we're addressing with these competitions that are coming up. Is it that they don't understand what they have to do? So we're also thinking about rebuilding the website somewhat to make this more intuitive. So yeah, that was an interesting insight for us, because to us it was clear that this is important, this has to happen. But we realized that the resonance was somewhat different, and we'll have to reconsider this, I would say. So this was it from my side. I am happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Manuela, for presenting this very important initiative. And I just calculated, if let's say 20 of us are native speakers of Swiss German, and do 100 sentences, you get another 20,000 samples in 3 days.
Would be great.
So, comments, questions, ideas?
Perhaps I may ask a question. I just wonder, from the recordings you already have, if you look at Common Voice, you see that only 7% of all Common Voice are female speakers for don't know reason. Do you have a similar thing now with the Swiss German, that it's mostly men speaking because they're more likely to speak, or?
I haven't actually checked. I don't know if Michel would have an answer to that. I haven't checked gender distribution.
I didn't do the stats, but as a what I saw so far when checking recordings, I don't think so at all. No, I think it's pretty balanced.
Okay, that would be great, because this is something I don't like about the Common Voice corpus, that it's so biased on one gender. Yeah, cool. And perhaps a second question that came into my mind, I got the feeling if you ask Swiss people to read out a High German text, they tend to use their dialect, but they not replace words that much as they would be while speaking freely. Do you also have the impression, or is this something you wouldn't say?
I can only speak for the samples I've listened to during validation. There it seems that people really make an effort to use the dialect. We also have some instructions in the beginning explaining how to do it, and like really asking people to think about how this would be rendered in dialect. And I believe that this might make a difference. I know what you're referring to. This is kind of the telling a storybook in dialect, and the syntax is very standard German, and this is what you hear.
Exactly.
Like, yeah. Yeah. We were aware of this effect and are trying to mitigate it. And I only have like sporadic evidence, but I would think that it's working out.
Cool. It would be really, really great once this is done. Yeah. Cool.
I actually had a question kind of like in the same direction. So like you're saying you're trying to mitigate that bias, and I do understand that you're doing that by providing the detailed descriptions at the beginning, like asking them to reflect and so on. Have you or do you think, is it recommendable also to actually have them write it down first in some transliteration to maybe help more, or did like what is your opinion on that? Like, would that help?
This is something we considered, and something that's actually implemented in the application, but we haven't released it because we were thinking that this would be a nice way also to get the intermediate transcripts. But then for launching the project, we decided we will do the thing that is basically least effort to get data. So we omitted this. So right now you really go from seeing the standard German sentence to hopefully some reflection to reading it aloud. But it's something we could do at a later stage to ask for intermediate transcriptions. And it would be interesting, I would think.
Right. And do you feel that are there ways to, or do you think certain sentences may cause less bias than others? And would there be ways to automatically choose better suited kind of standard German sentences than others? I don't know, for instance, by the by certain structures or something like that, sentence structures.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, actually. It could be that certain syntactic structures lead to more bias, for example. But for now, we decided to have not too many constraints on the data we present. but it's something that we could consider in the future. I don't have an exact answer to that at this point.
Thanks.
What about Swiss German dialects with a foreign accent? Like 1/3 of Switzerland are non-native Swiss people, and maybe possibly like me, I'm from southern Germany, trying to speak Swiss German. So you have also foreign accents on those Swiss German dialects. Any opinion on that?
That would be another interesting use case for sure. Right now, we cannot track that because we're really asking for a Swiss postcode that represents the dialect, but it could be something that could be added. But let's say we go for the basics first. We could definitely test it on non-native speakers of Swiss German. But on the data collection and modeling side, I would leave this to a future step.
Sure, yeah, so I'm not recording myself because I would have this foreign accent, sorry.
That's okay, you can validate and tell your friends.
Okay.
So maybe a question from my side. So how could we turn this resource also in something that it would help text to speech? Are there ideas, or are there, what are the challenges and what are the perspectives maybe? Also to make a connection with Julian maybe.
It's just different data that you need. So we're trying to reach as many different speakers as possible, because this typically helps the speech to text quality. In text to speech, you look for way fewer speakers and more data per speaker. So it's somewhat a different requirement, I would say. Or what do you think, Julian?
Yes, so for us, it would, or not for speech synthesis, it would be super important to have really high quality data. There are some newer approaches where people are trying to learn speech synthesis also from noisy samples. But normally you still use very high quality samples. So maybe if there would be a way to, I don't know, flag like the super high quality samples in the validation process, something like this could be an approach. Yeah. Also, if I can come back to maybe the point from Oscar Koller, because we had similar problems when collecting our data set. So in our case, we always we gave the speakers the high German sentences, and they first had to translate it to Swiss German. And we actually had to, in the beginning, give them some instructions for some common pitfalls when translating to Swiss German. For example, there are words like jedoch or sowie, which are common in High German but sound really strange in Swiss German. And probably some other pitfalls that we told them to avoid. Yes.
Again on that topic, what do you think about kind of having a multi-stage process where you in the beginning have someone translate it, but then you actually have other people listen to that translation already as input? Could that alleviate the bias a bit? Like say, instead of getting visual input, you then get acoustic input from other people who did the same sentence and who were already validated.
Maybe I can give an answer, a quick one. We are aiming for as many different sentences as possible to be recorded. So that's kind of, yeah, that would be a different direction, I guess. So I don't think we will follow an approach like that. But it would be interesting. It would certainly help people to get a better idea, especially maybe when they start out of what's expected. Yeah, kind of a tutorial.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, thanks.
The writings with German is another topic. People have very different takes on how to write it down.